The story I'm about to tell is one that continues to traumatize me years later. I hope this isn't a trigger for anyone, and I do apologize in advance if it is. I will keep it short and spare you the gory details. It was late summer and I set out on a solo camping trip to enjoy a quiet weekend. Little did I know, my camping trip would be everything but quiet and would lead me to a horrifying discovery. I decided to explore the dense forest but couldn't help but notice the foul stench that filled the air. It grew stronger with each step, and I figured an animal had died and was decaying. Nonetheless, I was curious and decided to follow the odor. The many years I worked as a paramedic couldn't have prepared me for what I saw next, a lifeless body lying among piles of dirt, swarmed with flies. My heart was racing as I absorbed the shocking scene. I was fearful at the realization that something so horrible had happened in such a beautiful place. I took a small step closer and saw that the body was in fact deceased. I realized that it was the same woman who I had seen on missing posters in the area. I ran back to my campsite, where I gathered my belongings and raced to find help. It seemed like it would be forever before I found help. Finally, I saw someone, a man who asked me if everything was okay. I could barely get the words out when suddenly I threw up. He handed me a bottle of water and I chugged it down. After finally being able to explain what I saw, the man grabbed his phone and called for help. About 30 minutes later, the cops arrived, and I walked them to the area where I had seen the woman lying. Needless to say, I went home after all the commotion, and I haven't been camping since.
This story happened to me last summer while I was camping in Vermont. I work as a software engineer, which can be a very stressful job. Some days I don't even get a chance to leave the house because I am so caught up with coding. I had decided that I wanted to go camping and enjoying nature for a change. It took me a little over 3 hours from my home in northern Massachusetts to get to the campsite. I had just finished setting up my tent and sat down to enjoy the cold beer I had just taken from the cooler. The sun was setting, and I enjoyed the view from where I sat. The area was quiet except for the hooting of an owl, which seemed at a distance. My father told me when I camped with him as a child that a hooting owl was often a warning of danger. But I dismissed it as mere imagination and focused on building a crackling fire. After a few minutes, I heard a rustling sound in the underbrush, and I realized I was now alone. I strained my eyes in the darkness for any sign of movement, but all I could see were silhouettes of trees. Suddenly, I heard a low growl which sent a chill down my spine. I realized what the sound was. A massive grizzly bear walked from the shadows. I was beyond scared. Instinct kicked in, and I stood up slowly. The bear lunged at me. It swiped its paw at me, but thankfully it didn't make contact with me. I stumbled backward, narrowly avoiding a fall. I grabbed a tree branch and swung it at the bear. But it kept coming at me and charged at me again. I fell to the ground, and it swiped at me again, but this time the claws tore my shirt and the skin of my chest. I honestly thought I wouldn't live to tell the story, but I knew that my only chance was to fight back with every ounce of strength I had left. I reached for a small pocket knife and opened it. The bear lunged at me again, and its jaws snapped inches from my face. I stabbed the blade into its side. I wasn't sure if it was hurt because the fur felt thick, but then I saw blood and the bear started roaring in pain. I didn't stick around to see what would happen next. I ran as fast as my injured body would allow, desperate to put as much distance between myself and the animal. Eventually, other campers were alerted to what was happening and tried to help me while the rangers were en route. I still enjoy camping very much, but these days I rather camp from my backyard. Not too many people can say they fought a grizzly bear and won. Thank you for listening, and stay spooked.
This story was sent to us from Garrett. One weekend several years ago, my girlfriend and I decided to go camping for a weekend. The campsite was about an hour and a half from where we live. We had been there a few times before, so we knew what to expect. When we arrived, it was just before dusk and there were a few people already set up. We drove another half a mile until we found our own spot away from everyone. We always like to create distance for privacy and other reasons. By the time we got set up, the sun was already set. We spent the next few hours hanging out and enjoying nature with our dog Buddy. Buddy is a coonhound with a very good sense of awareness. We loved taking him with us because he would always alert us if there was any danger lurking. Usually, we only had worried about wild animals such as bears, coyotes, etc. At about 10:30 we decided to call it a night and we laid down to sleep. Shortly after we laid down, Buddy started barking uncontrollably. I got up to check on him and he seemed to have his attention fixated on something in the distance. It was pitch black and I couldn't see what he was barking at. I went back to the tent after Buddy calmed down and I tried to calm my girlfriend down as she was very nervous. A few moments after I went back to the tent, I heard a loud bang which brought me to my feet quickly. I stepped out of the tent and my girlfriend followed behind me closely. Buddy was now barking again. I exited the tent to find two large men in orange jumpsuits. It was obvious that they were inmates who had just escaped. One of the guys had Buddy by the collar while the other approached us with a knife in his hand. The guy who approached us demanded all of your valuables. They took our food, the little cash we had, my cell phone, my clothes, and my pickup truck. They demanded my clothes and made me undress. I couldn't believe this was happening. My girlfriend was so scared her body went into shock immediately. They threatened us and told us that if we made a sound before they exited the campgrounds, they would show up to our house and hurt us. By this time, they had at least my information from my ID. After they left in my truck, I stood there holding my girlfriend until she calmed down. Buddy was still barking uncontrollably. We made our way towards the exit and when we saw a ranger driving around, we reported what had happened to him. The only clothes I had to wear was the orange jumpsuit from one of the guys. The park ranger treated me like I was the criminal because of what I was wearing, and he didn't take his eyes off of me. The police showed up and as soon as they saw me, they pointed their guns at me and cuffed me. After I told them who I was and explained myself, they relaxed a bit. They gave us a ride to the police station and took our statements. We spent the rest of the day at the hospital with my girlfriend because she was having anxiety attacked every hour or so. Eventually the guys were found and taken into custody. We also learned that the guys had escaped and were on the run for about 16 hours by the time they got to us at the campsite. My girlfriend and I had to go to court to testify against them and it was so traumatic for us both. We have since gotten over what happened that night and even gone camping since. We now only camp at sites that are more heavily patrolled. Stay spooked.